Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Michael Richmond, a double board certified cardiothoracic surgeon. As a doctor, I'm sure you can imagine the things that people talk to me about in private. One of the things that amazes me is that since COVID, I've interacted with so many vaccine deniers. Many of these patients have received misinformation from friends or from the internet about mRNA vaccines in general, and none of their concerns are rooted in evidence-based medicine. When I confront them with the simple question, would you get an mRNA vaccine for cancer? They usually stop and think for a second, and the far majority of them say yes, because cancer is different than COVID in their mind. At least that's the rationale they seem to use. It intrigues me that individuals pick and choose medicines and treatments for their illness or condition or disease based on the perceived severity of that illness. I'll give you an example. Jews and Muslims who don't eat pork have never asked me if the bioprosthetic heart valve is bovine, meaning from cow, or porcine, meaning from pig. This is an extreme example, but I've also never been asked by a Jew or Muslim, is it true that the armor thyroid they're going to take is from desiccated pig thyroid glands? Yet, so many people would rather die or suffer from COVID-19 than get an mRNA vaccine, right? Let's be honest. That's the theme that's going around right now. The ideas about the COVID-19 vaccine are not necessarily based in fact, because if one does research, they will see that this is not a new technology. I can promise with near certitude that nobody would refuse an mRNA vaccine if it could cure or treat their cancer. So it is with this background that I want to talk about today's topic, which is how a new mRNA therapeutic vaccine was providing cancer patients with hope that once administered will treat existing tumor and protect against metastasis and prevent recurrence. And I say was because that was until the charlatan RFK Jr. just ceased all funding for mRNA vaccines of any kind. So let's now talk about mRNA vaccines in general. The idea behind mRNA therapies is to produce antigens that train the immune system to recognize invaders like viruses and then mount an immune response. Despite the seemingly sudden appearance of this cutting-edge mRNA technology, it is, like many scientific innovations, actually the product of decades of piecemeal research. mRNA was first discovered around 65 years ago after scientists worked for years trying to understand how DNA coordinated protein production in cells. So inside all living cells are tiny protein-making factories called ribosomes, if you remember from biology. These factories make whatever proteins they are directed to produce, and those directions come from mRNA molecules. For decades, scientists suggested it was hypothetically possible to hijack this mechanism and deliver artificially designed mRNA to a cell, instructing it to generate whatever protein one wanted. But the idea was science fiction until several discoveries in the 1980s finally made it possible. Across the 1990s, mRNA technology sat on the fringes of science, with many researchers suspecting the immune problem was insurmountable. But in 2005, biochemist Caitlin Carrico published an extraordinary breakthrough. After toiling for well over a decade, she and her colleague Drew Weissman demonstrated a small molecular tweak to synthetic mRNA that could allow it to evade immune defenses, slip inside a cell, and send its message to the protein factory, to the ribosome. Thus, many researchers pivoted to investigating synthetic mRNA as a novel vaccine technology, since vaccines required just one or two small doses. Vaccines were never the primary focus for many mRNA researchers. However, they did seem to be the most feasible and realistic clinical application. Despite a new clinical therapy can be a frustrating, slow process, the path from initial discovery to market approval for a new medicine can take at least a decade, believe it or not, with the 3 phases of human clinical trials alone taking up tens of millions of dollars and more than 6 years to complete. So by 2019, mRNA vaccine research was quietly chugging along, with a number of targets proving promising in early-stage clinical trials. However, no mRNA-based therapy had yet been approved for market use, and few people around the world had ever been administered this experimental treatment. Enter COVID-19. So many of the innovations currently used by the COVID-19 vaccine were developed throughout the past 14 years. But when COVID-19 hit, the best of those innovations and knowledge were put together. The breakthrough is now opening up the possibility of mRNA therapies for a range of other disease, including HIV, influenza, malaria, Lyme disease, herpes, shingles, or even to repair heart tissue after a heart attack. But perhaps the most exciting target, however, is cancer. In this case, mRNA isn't so much a preventative vaccine, but a therapeutic one, administered to cancer patients to treat existing tumors and protect against recurrence or metastasis. Trials have shown this technology could be co-administered with other treatments like immunotherapy or targeted therapy. Now researchers at Tufts University have created a new mRNA vaccine for cancer that's designed to carry its cargo to the lymph nodes rather than to the liver. Tests in mice showed significant inhibition of the tumors, with the cancer disappearing completely in a decent percentage of the cases. For the new study, the Tufts researchers investigated ways to improve the immune response by changing where the mRNA ends up in the body. The team says that in most cases, the mRNA tends to end up in the liver of a person, but in this case, in a mouse. But a more effective immune response would be produced by sending the molecules to the lymphatic system, where the antibodies are made. And that's where immune cells are directly trained to recognize the intruders. In tests in mice with metastatic melanoma, the team found that the treatment significantly inhibited the tumors when combined with another treatment called checkpoint inhibitors, which is immunotherapy. Better yet, complete remission occurred in 40% of the cases, and the cancer didn't recur later on, even after the scientists injected them with metastatic tumor cells. So they injected them with the metastatic melanoma. The breakthrough could add a new weapon to our growing arsenal of mRNA cancer treatments, several of which are already in human trials. Well, they are, but everything's ground to a halt, as I said earlier, because of RFK Jr., which is really sad. But hopefully it will restart again as soon as he's gone. So with that, I hope you learned something today. Thank you for listening. If you have any further questions, you can go to my website at www.paladinmds.com. And I hope you have a great day.